The tide always comes back. But what about the people we lose to it? Salt in Our Veins, Chapter 1. The Last Summer. The boat moved like it had a will of its own, slow and sure of the calm sea. The sails, weather by faithful, strained gently against a soft breeze, their edges fluttering like the wings of a resting seabird. Beneath the surface, the water was clear, blue deepening to black. Where the shallows gave way the endless depths, the coastline of Eden curved like a secret kept too long. The headland watching over them, silent and old. The water lapped at the hull with a sound like breath, steady, timeless. Eden was the kind of town that clung to the edge of the world, where the streets ran narrow between buildings, weathered by salt air, and fishing boats outnumbered cars. The wharf was the town's heart, its timber bones creaking under the weight of nets, and stories passed between generations. The air smelled of fish and wood smoke, and at night, lanterns swung in the sea breeze, throwing soft light on faces lined by sun and sea. It was a place where everyone knew everyone, where gossip floated as easily as the tide, and where leaving was talked about more often than it was done. Noah had always been the boy who would leave, and Kai, the one who would stay. Kai stood at the main sheet, his hands confident on the worn line, 18. Though the sea had made him older in ways no number could mark. His skin was sun-dark, shoulders broad, from hauling sails and pulling nets, hair a mess of salt-stiff curls that framed a face more often serious than not. His eyes, dark and steady, always watched the wind, the water. There was nothing hurried about him. Kai belonged to this place, to the boat, the tide. The sky stretched wide over the sea. Across from him, Noah leaned against the tiller, easy and loose-limbed, in the way of someone who never had to try to be seen. 18 too, but different, sharper, lighter, as if part of him was always halfway out the door. His hair curled at his temple, where sweat and the sea spray dampened it, and his eyes, a pale storm gray, seemed fixed on the horizon more than the water beneath them. His mouth quirked into a half-smile that made people forgive him anything. The city already pulled at him, even as the wind tugged at the sail. His voice, when he spoke, had that mix of excitement that made Kai ache to hear it. They sailed for hours, saying little. The day stretched out like a held breath. When Kai did glance at Noah, it was always brief. Afraid if he looked too long, he'd give himself away. Afraid Noah would see the truth in his eyes, the thing he buried under years of friendship and silence. The wind shifted, lifting Kai's hair, bringing the scent of seaweed and wood smoke from the shore. He watched Noah in the fading light, a boy he knew better than himself, and the stranger he couldn't hold on to. The ache settled in his chest, like an anger dropped too deep. No wind in the city, Noah said, voice low. He didn't look at Kai. Kai kept his gaze on the sail. Not like this sea. Noah's laugh was soft, almost sad. Yeah, not like this sea. A gull cried, far off. They sailed until the stars began to prick the sky, the horizon blurring into dark. When at last they turned for shore, neither wanted to be the one to suggest it. They pulled the boat up beyond the reach of the waves. The sand was cool now, the heat of the day fading into night. They built a fire with driftwood, the flames crackling low, throwing shadows long and thin. Kai sat with his arms around his knees, watching the sparks rise and die. The firelight painted Noah in golden shadow, made him look older. They talked in low voices, of the first time they sailed this boat alone, of nothing that mattered and everything that did. Their voices wove through the sound of the surf, the night wrapping around them. Noah dropped beside him, close enough that their shoulders brushed, close enough that Kai could feel the warmth of him, the weight of what was unsaid. "Big sky here," Noah murmured. "Won't see that in Sydney." Kai wanted to tell him not to go, wanted to say it so badly it hurt, but he didn't. Instead, he nudged Noah's foot with his own, forced to grin. "Don't forget it." Noah turned to him, eyes dark in the firelight, mouth parted like he might speak, might close the space between them. The world held its breath. The night seemed to still around them, as if waiting to. Noah's hand lifted, almost without him knowing, and his fingers brushed Kai's. Tentative at first, then lingering, just enough to make the moment feel like it was theirs, like it had always been meant to be. Kai's eyes didn't move away, locked on Noah's, dark and steady, as if looking too long could somehow make the night hold still and keep them there forever. And then the wind shifted, the fire spat, and Noah looked away. The moment slipped through Noah's fingers like water. Morning came pale and quiet. They pushed the boat out one last time. Kai watched Noah at the helm, every line of him, every movement. He tried to memorize it, knowing it wouldn't be enough. The sea was soft beneath them, a mirror to the empty sky. As they came ashore, Noah hesitated, then turned and pulled Kai into a hug, longer, fierce, as if he wanted to leave something of himself behind. Kai held on just as tightly, burying his face against Noah's shoulder, feeling the shape of goodbye in the way they clung to each other. "I'll miss you," Noah said, his voice rough with everything he couldn't say outright. No grand promises, no looking back, only knowing the knowledge that they had entered a wide uncertainty of adulthood. 10 years passed. Kai stayed in Eden, as steady as the tides he knew by heart. He helped with the family business, mending nets, running the shop front of the wharf, fixing engines when they coughed to a shop. But always he found his way back to the sea. The boat became his quiet refuge, the sail his steady companion. There had been company now and then, casual, brief, but nothing that settled into shape of love. Kite didn't mind, or told himself he didn't. He had the wind, the salt, the white sky, and most days, that was enough. The years moved quite around him. Seasons turned, tides rose and fell. He loved Eden, the way the sea met the sky, the way the wind filled his lungs. Love, he figured, was something for other people, or maybe for another lifetime. What he had was the boat, the ocean, and the memory of summer that refused to fade. Noah had started strong. He excelled in his classes, driven by that hunger for success everyone had always seen in him. Internship came easy, and at first, It seemed like everything he had left Eden for was within reach. He was the boy bound for something bigger, and for a while he believed it too. But life doesn't always give you what you think it will. The shine dulled faster than he expected. The city had taken Noah in and worn him down. His days blurred between meetings and late nights, staring at the glow of a screen that never gave back what the sea once did. The salt of Eden had long since washed from his skin. But in the quiet moments, alone in a small apartment that overlooked nothing but glass and concrete, he could still taste it. After another relationship ended as quickly as it began, a month's, that was all it had lasted. Just like the one before it, and the one before that. But the quiet at night left too much space for the memories of a boy on a boat, a summer that had felt like it would last forever. And then the work dried up. The market turned. The company downsized. And Noah, once the golden boy, was handed his notice with a handshake and hollow words about talent and timing, and walked out into a city that felt colder than he remembered. For months as he tried, applications, interviews, all leading nowhere, the saving thinned. The apartment felt smaller. The idea of going back to Eden shifted from impossible to inevitable. As much as he wanted to see it, to see the sea and sky, and maybe Kai, he feared it too. About how far he had fallen. But there was nothing left to hold him where he was. The tide was pulling him home. Noah dressed carefully the morning he left. His best shirt, pressed and clean. The one suit jacket that still felt like him. The drive was long, hours of empty highways and scattered towns. But as he crested the last rise, Eden unfolded before him. The coast stretching wide, the sea glittering beneath cliffs that held the town like a secret. Noah parked the car by the wharf, engine ticking as it cooled in the night air. He sat for a moment, fingers loose on the steering wheel, listening to the sound of the sea. When he stepped out, the salt hit him first. The street lights along the wharf cast long, broken reflections on the water. A gull called once, somewhere unseen. He turned slowly, taking it in. Further down, near the end of the wharf, two kids laughed as they chased each other along the rail, shadows flickering in the lamplight. As he got back in and started down toward the water, the houses came into a view, low and weathered. Eden breezed him in again, as if it had been watching, knowing he'd come back eventually. Kai sat at the bar that evening, the low hum of conversations and clink of glasses filling the space around him. A few friends crowded nearby, laughing, swapping stories of the day's catch and the usual town gossip. The door creaked open, and the men stepped inside, wiping the sea air from his face, smirking like he held a secret. "Guess who I saw rolling back into town?" he said, loud enough for the table to hush. Noah, driving like he owned the place, in some fancy car, all polished up. I felt the words hit, like a shift in the tone. His glass paused halfway to his lips. He didn't look up, didn't speak, but inside, everything tilted, like the world had changed into a single breath. Noah stood at the water's edge, the sea stretching dark and endless before him, the moonlight caught in the ripple of the tide. What now? He'd thought of the stories he'd have to tell, how he framed it all so no one would see the truth. That he hadn't come home because he wanted to, but because he run out of anywhere else to go. He rehearsed the lines in his head, polished and hollow. But even as he tried to shape the words, they felt thin. He stared at the horizon, at the line where dark water met darker sky, and wondered if he could still become the man he once tried so hard to be. The man people here remembered. The man he promised himself he'd become. The wind tugged at his jacket. The tide moved below, steady as breath, indifferent to him and his figures. And then his phone buzzed in his pocket. He froze. He didn't need to look at the screen to know. The weight of it settled before his eyes found the words, "Welcome home." Thank you for listening to Chapter 1 of Salt in Our Veins. If the sea of this story stirred something in you, share it in the comments. We love to hear what stayed with you. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us for the next chapter as the tide brings Kai and Noah face to face again. Until then, may the sea be kind and the stories stay with you.